And so I made it home in, like 10 and a half hours, through all the forest fires that were happening that time. And so I was a little nervous that there was going to be road closures and stuff like that. But luckily for me, when I left, there was no traffic, barely any cars on the road. There was a lot of smoke. But there was no road closures or anything. And yeah, I made it home with no traffic and no delays. So I got home at 12:30 at midnight and then went back to sleep.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the CodaCast. This is a podcast where we get to document our journey of our passion project, Kodawari. It is my aim to share our story and the story of people we meet along the way. In doing so, we hope to take what we learn and apply it to our pursuit of building the ultimate detailing destination in the GTA. Today, we have Jay Hoang back on the CodaCast. Jason, you were with us back in episode 4 when we were still fumbling through and trying to learn how to put a podcast together and what it means to kind of the kind of show that we wanted to create and the kind of content we want to put out. But it's probably been over a year, and I knew that I wanted to have you back just because I've been able to kind of see what you've done with JToons. So welcome back to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Exciting to do this again. So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, like drawing is something that has always kind of interested me. And it's something that I've kind of gravitated towards in terms of just I really love seeing what people are able to kind of produce and the kind of artwork that comes from just years and years of practice. So just seeing how much you've grown and how much your tunes have grown over the past year has been a big reason why I'm like, you know what, I have to have Jason back on. But before we jump into where it all started, because I know on the last podcast we're discussing mainly your journey as an automotive photographer. We talked a lot about your blog. We went into a little bit about the community over in Calgary and IllMotion. But I thought we could start with the fit that you just added to the collection. Tell us a little bit about the story of why you decided to get it and the process of just bringing it back home from BC.
Yeah, that's a cool car. So I guess it kind of started with when we moved into this new place in our new house here. We got the 3-car garage. I was planning on getting a lift, but we only had 3 cars, and with a 3-car garage and a lift, I could fit 4 cars. And Diana said, "Why do you need a lift if you don't have a 4th car?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna get a 4th car." And I've been wanting to build a fit because Diana's first car was also a fit, but we never really built it up. And so for months I was searching Kijiji and Auto Trader for used fits, but it's really tough to find one here locally in Alberta that isn't rusted or beat to poop. So I was searching, and I was building up my mod list, and one day Reggie just posted his fit for sale, and I just messaged him randomly, and I just said, "Hey, we started talking about the price and all the things about the fit, and we agreed on it, and that was that." And so fast forward a little bit later, and I booked a plane ticket. It was for I think like 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning. I flew there an hour, took an Uber right to his shop. I literally just looked at the car. He said, "You want to drive it for a little bit?" And I said, "Yeah." I took it around the block once just to make sure everything was good. I said, "Yep, all good. I got to get going because I got to jet right back home." And handed him the check, and there I was on my way. And so I made it home in, like 10 and a half hours through all the forest fires that were happening that time. And so I was a little nervous that there was going to be road closures and stuff like that. But luckily for me, when I left, there was no traffic, barely any cars on the road. There was a lot of smoke, but there was no road closures or anything. And yeah, I made it home with no traffic and no delays. So I got home at 12:30 at midnight and then went back to sleep. And that was it for the fit. So it was quite the journey, a 1-day journey. So it was cool. It was a good car. With that Jay's full titanium exhaust and headers and everything, it made my ears bleed at the end of it. It's like 5,500 RPM the whole way through.
Oh man, that was I'm guessing there was probably a lot of droning. Was there a lot of droning?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like my music was on full blast just so that I could hear something other than that exhaust in the cabin. It was just so loud.
So was Diane's Fit the same generation?
No, hers was the second gen, the GE.
Yeah.
Yeah. So We only ever put like Workmeisters on them and lowered them on T1R springs, but we never really did anything else to it. And so that's kind of where the flame came from to want to do a fit again. So
Yeah, because there aren't a lot of people who that modify fits. I know you see a lot more of it in Japan and certain other Asian countries.
yeah,
Just because there are a lot more vehicles that the community enjoys over there, but just because their cities are a lot smaller, the roads are a little bit tighter. But how did you like the drive besides like the crazy drone and everything? Is it automatic? Is it manual?
yeah, it's a manual, and Reggie did quite a few things to it. Like there's a final drive, there's a new clutch, and there's a short shifter. So it does make it a little bit more of a fun drive than your regular fit. The final drive and a bunch of suspension pieces as well. It's a fun car. It feels like a little go kart. It's not super fast, but just with the exhaust and everything, it's super fun. Like I'll often, even give the keys to some of my friends and say, just rip it, drive it like you stole it, right? Because that's how it's meant to be driven, and then they'll come back and be like, holy shit, this is crazy. So, you compare it to a regular fit, it's night and day. It's not like a regular fit at all. So it's super fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that final drive made it so that when you're driving it back from BC that you're sitting at what 5,500 RPM, and if it's
Yeah.
if it's droning like crazy, then that's
Yeah.
now that we're older, that drone and that driving experience just it's too much for me nowadays.
I know there's times where there's a little bit of the ricer in me that I get in and I'm just like, man, I love this, and then after a couple minutes I'm like, oh my god, it's so loud.
So are you planning on making any changes to the exhaust? Is Diane gonna drive it at all?
No, she's not gonna drive at all. It's just me. She doesn't know how to drive. She doesn't know how to drive manual, so maybe that's a good thing because the fit is actually a little bit lower than the Type R, so it's hard to get around. But I'm not gonna make any changes to it. I was going to do just like some things here and there, like new seats and maybe a paint refresh, but I just figured this is my daily for the summer. I'm just gonna drive it as is and enjoy it, and then take care of the Type R and do things to that one instead.
Hmm. So when you went to go see Reggie, was he still back at the shop that he was sharing with his other friends or something? Where it was mostly red inside.
Yeah, that was his old shop. Yeah, so I went there. I didn't even really get a chance to look around because they were actually in the process of moving, so he was just packing things up. So there was not much going on there, and everything was all messy. So plus, I was in a hurry to just jet back home as fast as I can. I remember even texting Diana saying, "I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna get the car real quick, and I'm just gonna rush back home." And she's like, "Yeah, just take your time, take your time." But I get a little anxious, and I'm just like, "Yeah, I gotta make it home. I gotta make it home on time because I wanted to beat the rush. I wanted to, in case there were delays because of the smoke, I wanted to just leave, right?" So, unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of time to spend there, but it was worth it.
That's cool, man. That's an awesome story. Just because this past summer I went out to like a car meet up in Markham. So up in Markham, there you generally see a lot more unique builds, just because there is a bigger Chinese community up in Markham in the GTA. But right at the beginning of the meet, there was like a whole train of fits that rolled in. There was like 6 or 7 of them. They were all modded it up like it was really really cool, and that's something that we don't generally see on the west end of the city.
Hmm.
So just seeing this small community of like fit owners and modifying it was nice. So when I saw that you picked up one, and at the same time Sherry's been asking for, she's been driving around our SUV as a daily, but there's something about just having a small, light, nimble like car, especially with like a fun Honda motor and
Yeah,
like a manual transmission. It's one of those cars that, yeah, you can give to a friend and be like, yeah, put your foot straight on down to the floor.
yeah,
Give it as much gas as you want. You're not gonna be breaking any speed limits, but
yeah,
it's still fun because you're not kind of feathering things, because nowadays cars are so fast, right?
yeah.
And just being able to jump in a car like that and corner it because it's not as heavy,
Yeah.
it's a different experience.
It is, and it's hard to explain until you actually hop in one and you experience it yourself. Like, yeah, I could be pedal to the metal and I'll be going, playground zone, but it's so fun going 30 kilometers an hour in a car like that.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember when she was sending over pictures of your buddy's EP3
Yeah,
with the Japan Walker kit.
yeah,
Yeah, and I was like, man, that's a super clean build. And
So clean.
The guys at the shop were like, yeah, get it for him. Like, man, we're gonna have to figure out a way to transport it back, and the shop is already so full of cars. But she's always loved that generation Civic, and yeah, having a small fun car that's not gonna get you into trouble is something that we want to explore potentially.
Yeah, that was a super clean car. Like he drives that thing maybe once a year, and he's had it brand new since he was, a teenager. He bought it brand new, and he's taken such good care of it, and he hasn't changed much over the years. He's added little things here and there, but yeah, that Japan Walker kit has been on there since, man, like 2007, and it's mint. It's crazy.
Does he still have it?
I think so. I don't know if he sold it yet. He didn't really. I didn't check to see, but I'm pretty sure he still has it.
Yeah, no, it's a super clean build because I remember seeing it like on your blog and as you kind of cover all the cars to the events and stuff like that. It was always a car that really stuck out to me. I was like, man, it really well executed, very tastefully done.
Yeah, very rare to see an EP3 done up nicely like that isn't rusted and beat up.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to reach out and see if still has it
there you
after
go.
This conversation. But yeah, man, let's jump into JToons.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of the success of JToon has allowed for you to maybe potentially help finance the fit, right? So like I would love to kind of talk about what you've done with JToons and the origin story, right? Because the last time we had the podcast and sat down and talked, I think you were just getting started. So do you kind of want to share where it all began?
Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't really planned on creating this as a brand or anything like that. Like, I remember at the start of COVID almost, I picked up an iPad. I said to Diana, I was like, I want to get an iPad. She's like, for what? And I said, I just want to draw. I want to draw maybe something, design myself a shirt and print it just for fun. And she said, okay. And I got it and I was excited. And I was drawing the typical things, like the Mickey hands holding, a wrench and stuff, but it wasn't original. And so I never really took off with anything. After I got discouraged a little bit, I just stopped drawing altogether. So the iPad sat for a long, long time. And it wasn't until, again, like my friend from Balance Auto Garage, Jackie, he asked me, hey, can you draw my 4Runner? I was like, man, I had never drawn a car before in my life. I don't know if I can draw your 4Runner. He said, just try it. And so I did. A couple back and forth later, I sent it to him. He's like, yo, this is sick. And so raised my confidence a little bit. And, I stopped drawing cars after that. Again, because I was a little hard on myself. I didn't think that I could do it. And my friend, he saw it, and Darren, and he's like, yo, draw my car. And I said, no, I can't. And again, still kind of being hard on myself and basically putting myself down, thinking, not believing in myself. He said, no, just do it. And so, I said, okay, fine. I drew it, and there was a lot of back and forth. Make this bigger, make this smaller. You got to adjust this a little bit. And a bit of it was kind of discouraging to me, right? Because, I would put something together, and he would say, change it. And I didn't see it at the time, but, people see art and the way that they want their things done a certain way. And I have to respect that, right? And that was hard for me to accept because I thought that the way that I drew it should have been how it should be. And so, after a bunch of back and forth, he was like, yo, this is perfect now. And so that's kind of where it started with drawing cars. And, as I posted, more and more people said, hey, draw my car, draw my car, draw my car. And I started accepting them, and I started getting a little bit better, each and every tune. And Diana was like, man, you're spending like hours on every single car, and you're doing them for like nothing. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm good enough to charge somebody when I'm still practicing, right? And she's like, well, you got to start somewhere. So I think I was charging something like $20 a tune, and it was taking me like 6 to 8 hours. Like $20 for 6 to 8 hours is like nothing. And of course, it's it's a cheap price, and people were lining up to get this, and my commissions were just like totally full. I was like, how am I going to get through 15, 20 of these when it's taken me all day for $20? And so, I got through them all, and then I kind of closed the books for a little bit. I said, you know what, I'm going to start charging a little bit more. I'm getting a little bit better. I know what I'm doing now. And so I raised the price a little bit, and, people still wanted it. I guess the rest is history from there. The joke was, as I started posting them, when I was still charging the $20 an hour, was I'm going to save up for a Mugen wing for my Type R.
Yeah.
And so, at $20 per tune, everybody was calculating you only got to do, 100 something more tunes to get a Mugen Wing. And I was like, holy shit, I'm never gonna get there. But I did it, and eventually I kind of raised the prices, and as I felt like it was worth a little bit more, and I could provide more value to the tunes, and it was worth it. And here I am today. I got my Mugen Wing, and I'm thankful for everybody, including you guys, for supporting me and helping me get there. I never thought that I would be able to draw enough to get a Mugen Wing plus more, right? A lot of the success is really because of everybody. It really is just because of everybody supporting me and wanting their cars drawn. And sometimes I talk to Diane and I say, I can't believe, people want me to draw their cars. It's just art. But at the same time, it's personal, right? You can find a picture of a Civic or, an NSX online, but when you make it so that it's personal, people are willing to pay for it. And that's what I like to put a lot of my energy into, is making it personal for them, because I think that's what makes it important. That's where they get the value. It might be a stock NSX, but if they put a little sticker or they popped some TE37s on there and I draw that in for them, it's theirs now, right? It's very personal. So that's kind of where it's all started, and what's kind of kept me going is that personal side to it.
When you were growing up, did you draw as a kid? Was there any history of you kind of tinkering around with that craft before you actually picked up the iPad for the first time?
Totally. Yeah. When I was a kid, I drew a lot of Dragon Ball, Spider-Man, the classics that we kind of grew up with. And it was all paper and pencil, obviously. And yeah, I drew a lot when I was a kid. I never drew cars, again, because it was so hard to get a car right. You could draw Spider-Man and Dragon Ball, and their muscles might be a little bit bigger or smaller, but for the most part, it'd be okay. But like I said, if you mess up a headlight or a body panel on a car, it just doesn't look like that car anymore. And so I had never drawn cars before until I just started now. So yeah, I did draw a lot when I was a kid. So I guess it transferred over. But man, there's been probably a 20-25 year gap between drawing Spider-Man and Dragon Ball and cars today.
When I was younger, I used to sketch a lot too, and I'm pretty sure everyone went through that phase, that Dragon Ball Z phase, and I remember it was like grade 6 and 7, and yeah, we just loved sketching Dragon Ball Z characters. Yep. And I've actually flipped through my old sketchbook, and just to see what I created back then, it was fun, and I think it was something that I was always a little bit curious about, right? So I knew something was there back then, because before you get older and the world tells you, you got to get this job and pay these bills and stuff like that. Yeah, as a kid, you kind of gravitate to things that, you actually are interested in. So yeah, I love kind of hearing a little bit of was there signs of you curious about, drawing and actually enjoying it back then? Yeah. It's funny how your friends calculated exactly how many tunes you would need to do to get a Mugen Wing, because that was priced out for the FRP Mugen Wing, right?
No, initially it was the carbon one.
Oh, the carbon one.
Yeah, and that's why I said, I'll never get there. And I dreamt it once, that I was just like, maybe I can do it. And then I thought about the number of cars and how long it took me. I was like, nah, I'll never get there.
Yeah, that carbon wing is ridiculously expensive.
Yes. So, I mean, I settled for the FRP one. I still got the Mugen Wing anyway, so it's all worth it in the end.
Hey man, you got a badass fit, right? So I think that's something too.
Yeah.
So through this whole process, when you initially did the Forerunner, what was the time frame and gap between the Forerunner and doing? Sorry, was it Derek's TSX? Darren's TSX.
Yeah. 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, it was a long time. Like I said, I kind of did it for him as a favor, not as something to kind of continue doing. And again, I was discouraging myself because it took me so long, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I never looked forward or long term, thinking that you just got to practice. You just got to practice. I didn't do that, and again, I was kind of hard on myself as an artist, and because you compare yourself to other artists who put out such good work, but you forget the fact that they probably put in a ton of hours to get there too. And that's the tough part, is comparing yourself now to the end result or the current result of artists who have already put in the time. And it's easy to put yourself down, and it's hard to get past that point.
Yeah, I think it's even more difficult with the current landscape is with social media, right? Because at a very young age, everyone has access to phones, everyone has access to connect with their favorite artists and their favorite YouTuber or content creator, and you see this product that they're putting out there for you to see. You're seeing their highlight reel, but you don't really get a lot of insight as to all the hundreds of hours, all the nights of self-doubt. And I think the more we talk about that, the more we kind of explain that there's a certain process that is involved with getting good at anything, right? You gotta be open to being a little frustrated, looking a little stupid at first to kind of get there, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, yeah, you put it perfectly. Like you don't see all of the work it takes. You only ever see the finished product. And even now, social media is good because you can find inspiration, but you can also find ways to almost destroy yourself, right? If you keep comparing yourself to these people who have put in thousands of hours and saying, I'll never get there, you'll never get there. And so, at a certain point in my, I guess, JToon career, I really had to turn off social media and stop looking at things at other artists and comparing myself. I had to spend some time focusing on myself and refining my art and my style. And then once I felt comfortable with myself and my style, that's when I was able to go back and look at others, not to compare, but for inspiration at that point, because it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. Everyone has to kind of walk this balance of using social media in ways that really benefit you, right? You can always go too much on one end and spend like 2 hours kind of comparing yourself to a different style or the success of some of another artist, right? But at a certain point, you actually still have to commit some time to actually draw and learn and figure out what works for you and what doesn't, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I know you're actually in the process of printing your second coloring book.
Yes, yes.
Run us through kind of your thought process with putting together the second book versus the first one that you put out.
Yeah, the first one was a good learning experience. What not to do, what to put in the book. And the second book really just kind of helped me refine it a little bit, from little things down to the weight of the paper, the content in the book, trying to provide a little bit more value. And so in the second one, I tried to break down my steps and what I do when I draw to kind of help people, who are looking to do the same thing through their process. Because when I was going through my process, kind of like what I mentioned multiple times, I was really discouraging to myself because I would compare myself and say that it wasn't good enough. But nobody was ever there to kind of help guide me and give me tips, or how do you color a car? Those little things that really don't seem that important, but in the big picture, if you don't know how to color the car, it's not going to look good, right? So what kind of brush do you use? I had to kind of learn that all by myself by looking at real cars and trying to replicate what's in a picture in a toony way, right? And so I tried to add that to the beginning of the book so that people can kind of have a little bit more than just blank canvases to color. And it's a cool thing, but maybe giving a little bit more text and more substance to the book would provide more value. And so that's what I did. The good news is that it actually shipped. It should be here on Friday, and get ready to ship those out finally. So it's exciting. It's super exciting.
Yeah, no, it's so cool to see you put that extra spin on the second book as you kind of grow as an artist, right? Because I love how you mentioned you didn't have that resource when you were trying to figure it out on your own, and now you're trying to provide that for other people. And I think that speaks a lot to your personal brand and how you've been able to kind of build such a great community around not only yourself, but the artwork that you're putting out. Because when I look at how you've grown as an artist, and when I look at the shift that you've made from photography into now creating the tunes, we talked about this before, is that you spent a lot of time around cars, whether it's working on your own cars or shooting other cars. So like that eye that you have for seeing proportions, and you mentioned it, right? Like if the proportions are slightly off, it makes a huge difference, and the car just doesn't have that essence, that spirit that makes it unique. Yep. Right? So I've always thought, like, man, Jason has spent hundreds, thousands of hours editing photos, shooting cars, And over that time, you just build up that eye to be able to kind of see things that most people wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that learning curve and that on all those past experiences has actually built up this knack or this vision that you have to be able to kind of put everything into it to inform.
Yeah, and it's true, and it's not something that I actively think about. But when you bring it up, it totally makes sense. Like one of the examples that I even put in the book that maybe not a lot of people think about is, when you photograph a car, especially with a polarizer, and you shoot them, you can see that oil slick in the headlight. You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of like a rainbow look, as you probably know in detailing as well.
Yeah.
Those little details, if you can add that into the tune, whether people see it or not, at the end of the day, it's a little detail, and those little details is, I think, what helps me stand out. And you might not see it, and like I said, if you do see it, great, and if you understand what it is, even better. But at the end of the day, those little details kind of really help separate yourself from other people that tune as well, because there's so many people, and you really just got to kind of come up with your own flavor and style, and those little things is what kind of I think sets me apart.
Yeah, because you said as an artist, it's easy to take other people's criticism as a negative thing, but you said you were able to kind of like work with that criticism and then it'd be like, you know what, open-minded to this, and I'm going to take what I like, and then their feedback, I'm going to take that as well, and then eventually find my own style.
Yep. And it takes a long time, because not everybody will give you feedback, because a lot of people, when you give them their art, they'll be totally stoked about it because that's what they were expecting, or maybe it's just they didn't know what they were expecting, right? But there are other people who can be very picky, and that's totally fine too. I want my wing bigger. I want my wheels a little bit bigger. Can you make it a little bit more deep dish? And those little things that you have to edit. For next time, if I make this wing, maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger for this next person, or maybe I'll make the wheels a little bit more deep dish for this next person. And so all of these little things pass on to the next tune, and that's why I kind of, whenever I post, I always say, this result today that I'm posting is a result of all of these past cars that have given feedback to this. All of these past cars are the reason why I was able to create it like this today. And I have a good example, is my tune of the FK8. When I first drew it, I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And I refined it, and the one that I did for you, that's the new version of the FK8. And if I were to show you the old FK8, I don't know if you've seen it, you'd be like, oh yeah, totally, man. Like, and you can see it's a night and day difference because of people's feedback and how I was playing with different lines, and it looks more like an FK8 than it did before, even though before I thought it looked perfect, right? So
yeah, it's those little subtle details that, like, they all add up to really giving a car that essence that you're like, man. But I'd love to kind of see your first version versus the current version.
Yes, yeah, I'll show you after. I look at it and I cringe.
Oh yeah, I love kind of seeing your growth and what you've been able to kind of build over the past year, because we've kind of been on like our own growth journey here with Coda Wire, right? Mm-hmm. When we first recorded the podcast, speaking in front of a mic, being in front of a camera was still something that was just so intimidating and made me cringe so much. At the beginning, I was always, beating myself up. I'm like, man, I'm using these, like, I'm saying too much and this and that. And I listened to a lot of podcasts, so I would compare myself to, how other people were well spoken and were able to articulate themselves, right? But, there were so many times where I had to remind myself, hey, you know what? You just have to keep at it.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I reminded myself was like, you know what? I enjoy doing this. I enjoy having these conversations. And I know that over time, if I'm willing to just practice, if I'm willing to do my due diligence and try and study here and there, it's going to get better.
Yeah, it's exactly the same way. You really have to get over that mindset of, I didn't do it well this time, so I probably can't do it again going forward. It's really hard to get out of that mindset. And so when you're able to say, okay, what did I do wrong this time so I can get better next time? That's the better mindset, I think. And people really got to believe in themselves more. I think that's the biggest takeaway, especially for me, because I really thought that I couldn't do it. And, like I said, here I am today, almost 500 cars tuned. I never thought I'd get to 100, right? So it's crazy.
That's crazy. 500, man, that's awesome.
It's crazy.
So I know you've tried a lot of different styles, right? Like you have your the main art style that you have been working on.
Yeah.
And then you've tried different styles like the kawaii style. So what's the main difference between the kawaii style and what you've been doing?
Yeah, so like the classic style is, what kind of got me here. It's very detail oriented. There's everything right down to lug nuts. Like if you have titanium lug nuts, I'm putting the titanium burn on those lug nuts on that classic style. All lines are connected. The shading and highlight is very meticulous, and I pay a lot of attention to lights and shadows. Whereas the kawaii style is a little bit more disconnected. I use one single brush. I don't change the thickness. I don't change anything about it. And it looks a little bit more cartoony. There's less detail, but enough to make it still look like your car. Yeah, it's a little bit more fun. It's just a different style, and I just thought that I got to come up with different styles. I got to expand my portfolio a little bit, just kind of like you might, especially in the when you guys are detailing, you got to learn how to PPF, you got to learn how to do ceramic coating. Same way, I just want to offer a little bit more options to people when they want a commission of their car. And so two very different styles, but exciting to do both of them because they do still both require almost the same amount of time, believe it or not. So
Do you have a preference of which style you like, you enjoy doing?
Yeah, it kind of changes from day to day or week to week. I really lately I've really been enjoying the kawaii style. It's a little bit more fun, a little bit more disjointed. When you look at it, you can tell. But there are days where I kind of miss the perfection of the classic style and making sure every single detail is there. So it really depends on the mood that I'm in. I like doing both of them.
Yeah, no, the amount of detail that you're able to capture with the classic style is pretty amazing. I can see why that resonates with a lot of people, but just being able to kind of to see a different take on these cars is interesting because I don't know what it is exactly, but I noticed that even when we were exploring the whole world of diecast cars, they were actually certain manufacturers in Asia that made the squish style, right? Like the tuned versions. And it was super popular in Asia. And I've always wondered why that is and how to, why it kind of resonates a lot with Asian culture and all that.
Yep. It's just like a cute style. Like it's I don't know what it is. When I look at it, I do enjoy it. Every time I see the kawaii style, I'm just like, man, this is cool. I almost prefer it more than the classic style lately, especially for my own cars. When I draw my own cars and I just to test some things, I always kind of revert back to that kawaii style. And I don't know if it's because I did the classic styles for so long that I've grown a little bit fatigued of it. But it's still my baby, right? It's the first baby, so yeah.
And you also recently started trying different things in terms of designing your sweaters. The Advent Dragon that you recently put out was super, super cool. Talk to us a little bit of your thought process of exploring that kind of artwork.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In December, just a couple like last month, I decided to kind of take a little bit of a break from commissions and just get some time for myself, take a mental break. Drawing every single day, every day, all day is mentally and physically draining. And doing it for like 2 years nonstop, I just thought that I just need to take a little bit of a break. And so I couldn't get away from my iPad. I was always picking it up and wanting to draw something, but I didn't have any commissions. So I thought I'd spend that exploring different art styles and different ways of playing within the program and still trying to incorporate automotive styles in different ways. I thought that by drawing other aspects and putting car parts in a vending machine, I thought, hey, that's cool. I'm just gonna give it a try. Same with the Advent Neo Dragon. Yokohama actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and it kind of self brag here, but I'm one of their brand ambassadors now. So that's pretty exciting for me. So I thought that if I can, why don't I incorporate some of Yokohama stuff into my art? And so that's kind of where that dragon came from. And next week, actually, for Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, I've been working on something really, really cool for them as well. It's the Advent Neova Tiger for the Year of the Tiger. So I'm excited to post that. Got to wait a little bit longer, but yeah. So I've been spending this off time to explore stuff, do things with my art to see if maybe it's something that I can develop to again provide to people, right?
The coolest thing about kind of watching you to do that is that you're taking our Asian culture and you're mixing it in with things that you enjoy and the things that you like, and you're experimenting, right? And it's really what makes you unique, right? Like everything that you've lived through, all the interests, how you were raised. Like at the end of the day, when I look back at myself, it's all those things that are some of where you are at this current stage, and it's so cool to kind of see you kind of explore that creatively.
Yeah. And the one thing that kind of I try to do whenever I create like a new piece of art is what can I create that everybody can relate to, everybody will love, and I try to keep that at the top of my mind, even though I should be creating things for myself. I always kind of try to make sure that I'm creating content that other people will find interesting too, and that they can love too. That's always my priority.
So, because you use Procreate for the software for all this, right?
Yep.
What has your experience been with Procreate so far? Like, was this a program that someone recommended to you, or did you kind of just do your own research and land on, I want to give this a shot?
Yeah, I when I first got the iPad, I kind of Googled what's the best drawing program, and Procreate seemed to be one of the best ones. And so I think it was, I want to say like $14 at the time when I paid for it, and I was like, $14 because I was used to like the $1, $2 apps, and I was like, man. But they said, you pay once and it's a lifetime of updates. So I was like, whatever, I'll give it a try. And so I ended up paying for it. And, over the years, it's been one of the most amazing programs. Like the updates that they make, it's just insane. So I really love Procreate. I know there are a lot of other programs out there, but yeah, that's my go-to. It's so intuitive and so expandable. You can do so many things in it. So I love it.
Would you say that that's one of the best and most worthwhile investments that you've made in terms of this whole journey for you?
Totally, yeah. At $14, yes, and same with the iPad. I think those two things, even though I didn't know it at the time, and thought that the iPad was a waste of money when I stopped drawing. At the end of the day, yeah, I've gone through 4 iPads now, and I've just kind of upgraded as time went on and got myself something a little bit better, and yeah, it's totally worth it. The time that I spend on it and what I'm able to do, totally worth it.
Cool, man. I've been sketching a little bit on like this, just a black and white tablet that I have.
Yeah.
But just seeing the different options and the colors that are available to you with Procreate and the iPad is definitely something that I would love to try out. But I'm just gonna start very simple and just kind of just stick with black and white and just draw and just enjoy and use what I have right now, and then eventually kind of explore different options.
Yeah, man. I always say that one of the things that I want when I draw and when I share things is really I just want to not only create for people, but I want to be able to inspire people or motivate people to draw again. And I remember you and I were messaging a couple months ago and saying you've been inspired to pick up the pencil and draw again, and that's the best thing about art, is inspiring people to start. And I truly believe that art isn't something that's inherited. I think anybody can learn to draw, and anybody can draw. You just have to practice. And I think I'm a perfect example of that. You look at my first tunes, and you look at any artist's first pieces of work, and you look at it today, and it's through succession and getting better that got them there, right? It's not any sort of inherited talent. They weren't able to draw masterpieces when they were born.
Yeah, that's so important, and that's why when I recently made a goal of mine, I'm like, I've always dreamed about, I have these visions of how I would like to modify a car. I always enjoy taking a space that is a blank slate and modifying and making it a comfortable and enjoyable space. And that's kind of what we've done with like our garage space here at Kotawari Collective, and that's what I enjoy doing at home. So I was like, I would love to eventually be able to kind of take what's in my head and put it in digital format for a way to kind of explore creatively at whether it's taking a space, like what could this space look like, and what could this space evolve into, right? But in order to get there, I knew I had to kind of just start with just practicing first, practicing just drawing something and working at it. So I made it a goal of mine to you know what, if this is my aim, if I want to get there eventually, if I want to start be able to kind of create art like something that you put out, and eventually moving into environmental spaces, and I have to put in the work. So I was like, you know what, I have to spend at least, I put into my schedule, spend at least half an hour twice a week just drawing, just drawing whatever it is, and just continuing to do that, and that will at least make some meaningful progress to
it absolutely will. Yeah, you need the foundation, and you got to start somewhere, even if it's the shittiest sketches of your life. Just know that it is the foundation to next week's drawings and the week after's drawing. It's just really something that you got to kind of hammer into yourself, that it's the foundation. And as you start to, you'll know, once you're done that foundation and you get to the next step, you'll get like this light bulb in your head, and you'll be like, holy shit, this is good, and that will be the foundation for the next step. And it's just a never-ending building upon that foundation that I find helps me move forward.
Yeah, for sure. It's super cool that you're now a brand ambassador for Advent. Could you imagine that you would be here working with a company like that, at the beginning of starting all this?
No, not at all. I think it's really cool when they reached out to me and said, hey, you know what, we love your stuff, and it actually started off with my Type R and me having the 8008Rs and the Advent GTs, and at the time I didn't talk to Yokohama at all, but I love their stuff, and I love the tires, and I kind of just showed appreciation on my blog with it, and they saw it and they said, hey man, we love that you love our stuff, and we didn't even make you make you buy any of it, and so that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for. And so it kind of all branched out from there, and I kind of pitched the idea, and I said, hey, I have this other account, it's called JToons. I draw things too, and I was just wondering if you guys would be interested in also taking some art stuff. And they're like, yeah, totally. And so again, that's kind of where that dragon came from. And again, with the lunar year coming up, this new tiger piece of art that I'm doing, I think it's gonna be so sick. It looks really good, and I'm excited to share that too. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I know you teased a little bit of it, but that's the kind of stuff that we want on what we want on our walls, man. It's just mixing a lot of stuff that we love, right? Whether anything from the car world, mixing in a little bit of our culture. That's it, man.
Yeah, totally.
So how's the blog? Do you update the blog here and there? Like, has that taken a little bit of a back seat now that you've spent a lot more time?
Yeah, it really has. And every time I always try to tell myself to update it, put some JToons stuff on there, and I never get the chance. It's always, should I draw or should I update the blog? And drawing always takes the front seat. Yeah, I haven't had much time, especially during the winter. It always slows down. I don't take pictures of cars. I can't drive my own cars, so there isn't really much to share. So yeah, it has taken the back seat lately, unfortunately.
Yeah, things kind of change and you go through different chapters, right? So that's cool that they initially, so Advent initially reached out to you because of the blog, and you were posting like photos and pictures of the Type R, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the piece of art that you put out with the vending machine.
Yeah.
Right. I'm guessing that I love your captions. I think you bring a lot of humor to to your brand and everything, and I've always enjoyed your reels and stuff like that. But I'm guessing that you're a big fan of Advents over T37.
Yeah, I truly am, and it's not at all because of being a brand ambassador. I always have been. It's not that I don't love TE37s. I think I just have a little bit of TE37 fatigue. That's all.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But yeah, I wanted to get into a bit about your workspace at home, right? What I've really enjoyed about seeing you and kind of like your workspace at home is that it's always been very clean, very organized. So now that you've taken a shift to spending a lot more time working from home, how important was it for you to kind of set your workspace up to kind of cultivate and set the right tone for the work you want to get done?
Yeah. My workspace has always been super important to me, and it's important that it feels comfortable and welcoming, and that it's aesthetically pleasing. You know, especially because even outside of work, when I'm not working, I'm still sitting here drawing, right? And so I need to be in a space that feels inspiring, even if I just I sit back in my chair and I take a little bit break and I stretch. It needs to be, in my opinion, just kind of peaceful and aesthetically, like I said, inspiring to look at, to provide me some inspiration. I put my own art on the walls and I put my books up on the walls just to kind of help remind myself that this is what I'm doing it for, or this is where I've been, and this is where I am today. So yeah, I am a bit of a neat freak, and making sure that everything's always in its right spot, just to kind of make sure that it's organized. When everything's organized, I feel at peace.
Yeah, that's something that we really work hard, and it's something that I've just kind of come to understand as I've gotten older, is that I'm so easily affected by my surroundings. You know, whether that's the friends and the people I surround myself with, or just my environment. The cleanliness and the organization of the shop at home. It's something that I just gravitate towards. I think it's so important to set your environment right to kind of really put you in the best position to do what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you guys moved to the new place, right? I'm sure the garage space was a big deciding factor. What was your thought with how you wanted to set up your garage space?
Actually, it was the only deciding factor. So when we were looking for a house, we would walk in and the first thing I'd ask, can you do a tandem or a three car? And they're like, nope, then we're not interested. I didn't even go look at the house, because what's the point if if you can't do what I want in the garage, right? So I had plans for it to get the lift. I eventually wanted to put the epoxy on the ground, and hang flags, and make it a truly clean, organized, but an automotive and inspired garage. And I'm getting there. It's a little bit of work, but yeah, that's kind of what I want. I want to be able to drive in and also be inspired, even if it's just to park the car. Sometimes, especially during the summer, I like to walk into the garage, or I like to do something on the car. It's nice to walk into a garage that you feel houses your babies, right? Kind of similar probably to your shop. You want your shop to look and feel like it's the place to be all the time, and you want to go there. You don't want it to feel like a place of work, or just a place that just stores your cars. I guess that's the difference with us car guys, right?
Yeah, no, it's when I kind of need to step away from the desk or get some inspiration, I go back into the shop, and just seeing the cars clean, seeing the cars sitting like that, it just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
It puts a smile on my face. It kind of reminds me of why I love cars so much, and it's just a great source of it's almost like a breath of fresh air when you get back and you get to kind of like soak it all in.
Yeah, it really is, and it's nice to sometimes. It's weird to say. It's nice to sometimes just stand there and just look at your clean cars.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that, man. There's something about it, is when you start appreciating for what it is, and it's like a piece of art. It's a piece of engineering art, and you put your own spin on it, and just looking at it, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, it totally is.
Did you go with a specific lift for the garage? Is there any specifics that you were when you were looking for a lift for your space?
No, I didn't really have any sort of specification. Just as long as it was reliable and it did what it needed to do. It really is mainly just for storing the cars during the winter. It's less for wrenching on them. I feel like I'm too old these days to wrench on my own car. I'll bring it to my friends' shops or whatever, and you do it. But no, as long as it stored the cars that I needed, and it fit, that's all I was looking for.
Any plans for any more modifications to the garage, or are you pretty happy with where it's at right now, with the epoxied floor, everything's painted, you have your banners up?
Yeah, just a few more things, cabinets, an air compressor to start hooking up to the pressure washer, little things like that, a little bit more art on the walls, just to kind of decorate a little bit more. For me anyway, there's a fine line between over decorating and having enough in the garage to make it feel like it's a full enough space. So I'm still playing with that. The ideas. That's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah, no, it is a fine line of not putting too much in there, and then it starts getting a feeling a little bit too much, right? And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure some of that applies with tuning the cars too. You gotta walk that fine line and modifying the cars as well.
Totally, yeah, yeah, and with the tuning of the cars, like sometimes I'll add a little bit too much, and I'll be like, oh shit, I thought this was a good idea, but it isn't. So I'll have to delete it or take it out. So yeah, it's like that with everything for sure.
So I know you do enjoy detailing your car and the process of cleaning. What do you value when it comes to certain products? I know you like using CarPro. Is there anything specific about that brand that really speaks to you?
You know what? A big part of it is, and I know it's bad to judge a book by its cover, but it's really the marketing of it and the visual aesthetics of the brand, and what it kind of brings to the table. I really do try to look for products that don't overcomplicate things and kind of address all of the things that you needed to do. And so CarPro has done a good job of it. You have your ceramic coating, you have your topper, and you have your washes, and it's just super simple. And the everything right down to the scents and the names of it. It's attractive to me, and so that's kind of what has won my loyalty to CarPro. I've tried other things, and I always end up going back to CarPro, whether it's in my head or not. That's kind of where I always gravitate towards.
I definitely like the way even something as simple as how the labels are designed, and from what I've smelled from their products, it just are they a Korean based company?
I actually don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think they are. I'm not sure if like the chemical plant is in Korea and or if the actual company is based out of Korea, but yeah, they seem to be doing a lot of really cool stuff that really speaks to us.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you look at the color of the bottle and you already kind of know what the product is, and it's effective marketing for sure.
Do you spend a lot of time paint correcting? Do you enjoy that, or do you like applying the coatings more?
I like paint correcting a little bit more. I've been doing that for a long time, in the most basic ways ever. Probably nowhere near the levels that you guys do it at, but clean paint, swirl-free paint, shiny, wet paint is what really catches my eye, and that's always been like my number one thing when I look at cars. You could have the sickest car, but if your paint is just swirly, it makes me cringe. And so, even when I was photographing cars, that was always the first thing. I would always take a look at their paint and say, "Oh man," and it's bad to say, but if your paint's bad, it's really hard for me to be inspired to shoot good pictures of it. I know you probably won't see it at the end of the day in the picture, but it does make a difference. Same with that car shows, right? If your paint quality is poor, it's easy to walk by because it's a big part of your car, and people that kind of overlook it, I kind of feel bad. You spend so much money on your KW coilovers and your deep dish Meisters or TE37s, but you didn't polish your car, which really, well, it's not that expensive. It's a couple hours of work, and just get it done, right?
Yeah, especially with the DA polishers that are available.
Yeah.
I think the learning curve has definitely been reduced, right? And the fear of burning through paint is not what it used to be with working with rotary polishers. But that's actually one of the reasons why we started detailing at Kotawari, was because over all the years I've built the cars and I've always had thrown sick parts on it, but my paint was always something that was not to the level of my satisfaction, and I didn't know much about it. So I was like, you know what, I would really love to explore what this could be, or how the car could look if I actually dialed in the paint, and it makes a world of a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Like if your paint, like I said, if your paint is in poor condition, it's really easy to kind of overlook the rest of the car, especially if for us who it makes a big difference. The first thing I always look for.
What polisher are you using? Have you switched through certain ones, or
No, since let's say 2007, I've been using a Porter Cable 7424. It's the same machine that I've been using since 2007, and it has not given up. And I've always been like, I need to upgrade, but at the same time, I don't I don't do it for really anybody else other than myself. And I think that I'm pretty good at keeping the condition of my paint in good condition and swirl free. So I at the same time I don't really have to polish it often, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a trusty old Porter Cable 7424.
And is that a dual action or is that a rotary?
Dual action.
Dual action.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I guess when you get into like being intimate with your paint and correcting it, you can definitely appreciate what it takes to maintain it,
yeah.
right? And a little bit of care goes a long way.
Totally, totally. And I just wish that every time I saw a swirly paint, I could just tell them, just let me polish it real quick for you, and then you'll see the difference. Oh man.
Oh man, that's yeah. It's I remember seeing that one post where you kind of were going through a show and there were certain cars where the barrels weren't clean and you were grilling people for that and it seemed to just really strike a chord with the community and everyone was putting memes together. Everyone was tagging you in all
Yeah.
these like these pictures, but it was hilarious.
It's funny how that all happened. I mean, the funny thing now is I go to shows now and barrels are clean, and it's funny because every time kind of a show starts locally here, everyone will say, Jay Hoang is coming to show and make sure your wheels are clean, or if it's a meet, make sure your wheels are clean, and it's cool. I mean, it's funny, but at the end of the day, even your barrels, like those make a world of a difference, and you might not notice it when they're dirty, but when they're clean and the rest of your car is clean, it looks so good.
Yeah, I guess it kind of speaks to, the impact that you have on the community and how big of a role that you've played through your blogs, through your photography, everything that you've done. It's been a accumulation of a lot of years, like supporting the community, and I think that's why everyone values your feedback and everyone has fun with it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's cool. It has really come a long way, and it's just because I choose to try to do a little bit something different. Especially on my coverage on my blog on car shows. Taking pictures of cars is one thing, but sometimes a lot of people like to read different things. I just try to take a different spin on things, and that wheel and barrel thing just kind of took off, and it's hilarious.
So, now that we're in winter, in a bit of hibernation mode, and you're getting to try a lot of cool things with JToon, what do you see this year looking like for you? Like, what do you want to explore, and in terms of your builds, or just what direction do you want to take JToon?
That's a good question. You know what? I don't know whether this hiatus or break from Tunes has been good or bad for me. Part of me thinks that. I was joking with Diana. I just said maybe it's the end of JToon. Maybe I'm just a little fatigued, and maybe I just need a longer break. But at the same time, I want to keep drawing. So I'll be honest. I don't know where JToon's going, and I don't know if I ever knew where it was going. I just kind of did things, and it took off, and I found success in it, and I was happy to do it. And at the end of the day, if 2022 is the end of JToon, I can say the last 2 years has been an amazing run, good experiences. I've gained so much experience, and I've come across so many people and created so many cool relationships with it that I would never have if I didn't. But if it continues and I find some new inspiration and it takes off, then I'm ready for it, and I'm willing to try new things. So I don't know. It's a good question. I'm completely honest. I'm 50-50 on it because of this hiatus. I like the break, but at the same time I don't like it. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain.
Yeah, because you're balancing a full-time job, you're balancing raising two daughters and spending time with your family. So it is a lot, right? And just finding out what works for you, what works for your lifestyle. I think everyone kind of has to like just taking a pause and reflecting on what works for you is just so important.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's balancing everything and the family and everything else. And even just with JToon alone, if I focus on commissions, that's all I can do. Or if I focus on a book, that's all I can do, and I need to put something else on hold. So it's really tough to do all things at once, and you just really can't find enough time in the day. And I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of say is, people are always talking about the grind and hustling and putting in the work and working late hours and to get what you want. And to a certain point it's true, but at the same time, I've been doing it for 2 years, which isn't a long time, but I do think that everybody needs their breaks, and you do get that mental and physical fatigue that you need to take a break and recharge yourself. Otherwise you just kind of burn out, and your passion becomes a job, or a task that you don't look forward to anymore. And I think that's important. And that's kind of what I've learned over this last, month and a half here, is taking a break and ensuring that you kind of focus on yourself before everything else. It's nice to kind of create art and do things for people, or and make money, but at the same time your well-being is more important. It's a really tough balance for sure.
Yeah, because you started doing this because you enjoyed it, and at a certain point, we get caught up in. Sometimes it's being impatient with ourselves. Sometimes it's just like wanting to get to this certain level of skill and certain level of followers. That's the milestone, right?
Yeah.
But just being able to really reflect, sit back, and understand that, okay, you know what? If I want to be doing this for the next 20 years, what would that look like? And trying to pace yourself in a way that is in line with your lifestyle and in line with your values, and that's just so important.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And yeah, I think it's important to take as long as a break that you need, and feel no pressure to come back, because everybody will, should be respectful of that and be willing to wait until you are ready to come back. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm super excited to kind of see what you have in the works for Lunar New Year.
Yeah,
that's going to be really cool to see, what you got going on. But I think we'll just end off the podcast with a few questions that, I generally do ask our guests to give people a little bit more insight as to their quirks and who they
sure.
are. Yeah, let's start with, is there an unusual habit or something absurd that you love?
Unusual habit. My habit, it's kind of weird, is before I tune a car, I always end up sketching something completely ridiculous, and it has nothing to do with the tune. It's kind of a weird habit. I draw something dumb. It could be some random character in my head. It could be an item, an object, a piece of the car, just to kind of warm up, and it really only takes me like 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll just delete it and I'll forget about it completely. But it's weird. If I don't do that, my tunes, I feel, don't turn out correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's just some odd quirk that I have to draw something real quick, and then delete it.
It's cool. It's almost like you're warming up and getting into kind of like the right motions, and making it, I guess, almost easier to transition into doing a full tune.
Yeah, that might be it. And yeah, it probably is. It's weird because like whatever I warm up with or draw first, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing. And I guess that's part of it, but I just think it's so weird. Every time I do it, I'm like, why am I doing this? But I have to do it.
I like that, man. Routine is everything. Once you get into that routine, it really does help guide you. What are some bad recommendations that you hear in your profession or area of expertise?
I think it goes back to, again, just you have to hustle, you have to grind, and it is true to a certain extent. You have to put in the work to get to where you want to be, but there needs to be breaks. Everyone always says you need to work day and night. You need to, especially in artists, our drawing. Everyone always kind of says you need to keep practicing. You need to keep practicing, but practice on your own time. Whether it takes a week, a month, a year, you do it in your own time, and really stop comparing yourself to other artists. That's the hard part. Is we talked about it earlier. Is use other artists as inspiration, not as a comparison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, man. Can you think of a failure or like an apparent failure that kind of set you up or guided you into a different direction that maybe it had led to has led to success?
Yeah, I think a lot of my earlier tunes I still kind of consider as a failure, whether they were or not. Personally, I consider them as failures that really just kind of helped me get to where I am today. And I think again, the mindset had to change for me. They weren't failures. They were just building blocks of the foundation to kind of get me here. That's the mindset that I needed to change. Every time I looked back earlier in those days, I was always like, this is crap. This is not good enough. This is not good enough. And that's what kind of discouraged me from continuing. But over time, I kind of look back and I say, this is what got me here. So that's kind of where I feel is what I would have changed.
And then now that you've started and you've really explored this craft of yours, what have you begun to appreciate about other people in the space, or just this craft in general? When you look at other artists, or when you look at how far you've kind of, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to appreciate now, again, when you're not comparing, is that everybody has such different styles and drawing one car in so many different ways, in such amazing ways, that I've just like, I love following other artists just because artists are a little bit different than automotive guys. Automotive guys, I feel sometimes there's a little bit of competition. You follow them, and other type R guys are like, oh well, I got this, and you kind of feel like it's a competition to now just get something else that's better. But artists are a little bit different because it's easy to appreciate their style because their style can be different. Anybody can have a Type R and slap on some TE37s, and it's kind of the same thing, right? But for art, I can draw a Type R with TE37s different than somebody else, and it's so nice and easy to appreciate their style because you're like, damn, that's cool. Like, how come I didn't do it like that? And you take elements of their art and you try to incorporate it into yours, and it evolves into a new style, and that's why it's so cool. And art is so cool, is that two pieces of art from two different artists can evolve to become something else when someone else takes it, right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of again where it comes from. What I mean by inspiring each other. It's my art is inspired by a whole bunch of other people's arts, and it's evolved to what JToons is today. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it just goes to show that the value of just being in a community, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about social media, is that you can be part of the community, you can support each other, draw inspiration from each other, and that's what we should try and remind ourselves is the purpose of social media. And it's not kind of like blasting other people or showing off and all that stuff, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, there was that story that you shared today of someone making Valentine's cards with
Yeah.
car art, and I saw that. I went on their page, and it was a really cool to see how different everyone's art style is when it comes to doing automotive work.
Yeah, like that was such a cool idea. Like, he used a bride seat and said, I forget what the caption was, but it was something like, "I can't wait to hold you," right? Like it's a cool, mashup of a special day and car parts, and his style is so different, and it's so simple, but it's so effective. It's that kind of appreciation that's just like, man, that's really cool. And I would never try to copy it or try to replicate it, but it's easy to appreciate something that's that creative.
Yeah, man. It's nice to see how everyone kind of takes their own spin on certain things, but yeah, I really appreciate you making the time, man. I always enjoy our conversations, and do you want to just share your handles if people want to follow more of what you're doing and all your social media accounts?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. Love being on this. I can't wait to hear it. And yeah, if you guys want to follow me, my art account is at jtoons.co, and my personal account is at Jay Hoang. So 2 accounts, just to kind of keep things separate. But yeah, you can see all my work there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. And I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you. See ya.